So this is obviously prototype trigger number 2. This is back to using the factory spring, which you might be able to see. One thing I will say is that I accidentally sprung this a little. You need to be very careful. In fact, I mentioned this in my disassembly video, is when the trigger's out of the gun, be sure not to bend the trigger bar. Be sure not to overextend the trigger on the trigger bar. When it's out of the gun, you can compress these too far and it'll spring the spring. And then what you'll get is kind of this, I guess it's easier to see with the slide open. You won't get as much of a positive return as you should. So that's kind of what will happen if you spring it a little. So I realize it doesn't really show very well normally, but this won't snap forward. It won't be really springy enough. So you'll have some reliability issues. So I've got to take care of that. I got to recoil the spring a little bit. So just be very cautious of that. This isn't just with this trigger, this is with any trigger. If you have the trigger and the trigger bar out, the spring right here that goes between the trigger and the trigger bar, if you compress it too far or too much, it will give you reliability problems. Like I said, I'm going to have to rewind that spring a little bit. Other than that, like I said, the angle, I would like this to be a little more downward, although I also don't want to move it too far back. So right now, you can see this is the free play of the trigger. Pretty nice, and there's the brake. So I would like to change that angle just a little bit more downward, but it's really good. Like I said, clearly have plenty of room. I've got some sausage fingers, huge sausage fingers and enormous palms. You can probably tell for perspective on this gun how fat my fingers are. So yeah, plenty of room for gloved hands, whatever. I know there was some concern about that. If I move this angle down slightly, even more so, I like the straight trigger. You definitely have the option anywhere you want to press in it, wherever is comfortable for you. I like it. It's good. Got a little fired off a couple at the range. So one of the things that I said I wanted to do, to kind of give you a little perspective, because I know distances are difficult to kind of judge and everything on videos, especially some guy on the internet taking them with a cell phone camera, which just isn't working very good. But so I want to get an idea of relative free play here. Oops. Don't mind me. It's always awkward for me trying to talk to you guys looking through a camera with a camera in front of me, so everything I do is a lot more awkward than normal. So I just kind of want to get an idea here of about a relative idea, because I want to see how much you feel. So in me, when I'm holding on to this gun, obviously where you hit the trigger will provide some difference. If you're closer to the joint, you're going to feel less free play with your trigger, and the trigger will be harder to pull. If you're closer down to the bottom, obviously you'll feel more free play, but the trigger will be easier to pull. So normally I was kind of gripping it right about here, so I just wanted to get a kind of about middle point, so it's right about there. So I just kind of wanted to get a little perspective, a little relative, how much free play this is to a couple other guns. So we have over here Beretta Nano. I feel like this is common carry gun, clear obviously. So we're going to kind of measure, and these will be rough measurements because it does depend to some extent where your finger falls on this trigger. The curved triggers, I feel that that's more natural, that you're going to settle into the same spot about the middle of the curve. So that's kind of where we'll measure these guns from, compared to the Taurus, which could, with the straight trigger, it could be anywhere in this range. So we've got the Nano, and also we have my, don't tell her, because, you know, my wife doesn't like me playing with her Sig. But we've got the Sig P229. From my understanding, this is the Enhanced Elite with the short reset trigger. So this is standard, you know, Sig. Show you, but also clear. Sig, obviously well known to have a nice trigger. So same thing, I'm going to kind of measure a couple of these and kind of give you a relative difference. So we've got here on zero this guy out. forgive me. This is going to be super awkward. Like I said, everything is sitting in front of the camera. You can tell we're zeroed out here. We're in inches. So all I'm going to do to kind of get a relatively reasonable idea of where we're looking at here is just kind of between the trigger bar. And like I said, this isn't going to be super accurate because it all depends on where you put your finger and everything. So what are we there? Right now it's 0.9430. So that is 0.9430 inches from kind of the center point of the trigger guard there till when the trigger's in its fully open position. So all the way back, cock it, fire it. So we're at 1.2. Oops, kind of lost it there. Apologize. 1.272. Somewhere in that area. Is that what we settled into? Give me just a sec here. 1.2715. Okay. So that's the distance that we're looking at for those. So I'm going to measure these other guys here. So for the this is going to be a little bit awkward here. Let me see if I can get this guy to. Let me see if I can get the safe action trigger. So this is going to be. I'm going to try to measure from the furthest point here of the curvature to where your finger would actually rest on this trigger. Try to do my best with this. Like I said, I'm just trying to give you guys a relative measurement compared to a couple other guns. So this is 0.9690. Open. And if you, this guy, as you notice, has a pretty large amount of take up there. 1.4705. Okay. So now for this Sig, this is going to be a little tricky here. Yeah. So I'm going to try to do my best to kind of measure from the midpoint of this Sig trigger up till where it hits the middle of the trigger. So kind of the felt travel. 1.2560. Wait. 1.2545. .625. Am I drifting? Oh yeah, I'm drifting a little bit. Sorry. .6015. Okay. So quick shot here. So I'll pause the video for some quick math, obviously. So PT111 G2, the total distance from the all the way forward to all the way back the whole entire trigger travel is 0.3285 inches roughly. So, you know, about 1/3 of an inch, a little less. The Beretta Nano is more like 1/2 an inch travel. The Sig, and like I said, I'm not 100% positive, but I believe, because this is the Sig Titanium Blue P229, I believe this has the Sig SRT trigger already, I believe. So, as you can see, the Sig is a little over 1/3 of an inch. So, with the travel that I have, and this may have to increase slightly, just a little bit to give kind of a little buffer tolerance, but right now, let me break at least one of the gun safety rules here, but we know they're still clear. So right now, the Taurus trigger is actually a little bit shorter than the Sig 229 Enhanced Elite. So it's not cocked. Let me try that again. So this is the take up on both guns. As you notice, the Taurus is actually a fair amount shorter than the Sig. Just to make sure it's not a perspective thing that you're looking at. So it's a pretty nice deal right there. Breaks cleanly. I would say with my gun currently, with kind of the cleaning up and everything I've done, I don't have a trigger scale, but it's in the ballpark. It's not too far from the Sig. I mean, it's not a super light trigger. You do have to commit, pull through it, but it's pretty smooth. And, anyway, so this is the trigger. Like I said, be careful of the spring. The spring on these guys, between the trigger and the trigger bar. You overextend it. You overextend your spring, you'll get kind of this floppiness like I have going on that doesn't return the trigger quite as strongly as it should, and can lead to some reliability issues. So I have to recoil that spring a little bit. It's not a big deal, just something of a pain. If you guys have any questions or any comments or anything, oh, one last thing I was going to say. So on this guy, this is about the shortest amount of travel that you can use and still use the slide safety. In fact, I might have to make this travel a little bit longer, not much, but just to make up for tolerance differences. So basically, this trigger on this gun has to be forward a certain distance or the slide safety won't work. So actually right now where my trigger is kind of the minimum distance. So this is the free play that it has before it runs into the safety. So if it's behind where the safety engages, like if it was just a little bit further back, slide safety won't work. All sorts of weird things. I still don't think it goes off. I still don't think it can fire, but the slide safety is not working right. So if it's a little past where that slide safety catches, it can kind of go and you can slide forward past it. Anyway, things just don't quite work right. So right where mine is right now, that is how much free play it has. So this trigger right here, if you're not going to mess with the internal geometry of the gun or mess with anything else, if you're just doing a trigger SAO conversion, this is about the minimum take-up that you can have for this particular gun. And like I said, I might add just I don't know if you saw my trigger catch there on that spring that's slightly oversprung. Anyway, I might add just a touch more, just so that if there's some machining tolerances between guns, somebody doesn't end up with a problem with that. But like I said, it's good. I like it. I like the flat trigger. My next one, I don't know if I'll make another prototype or if it'll be an attempt at a production. Come forward just to straighten this angle out just a little bit, you know, maybe bring it from where it is right now to just in. So right now it's kind of like there. If I could bring it in just a little bit, maybe I think that would be about perfect. I like it. Hope you guys like it. I think it's going to be really nice here, guys. Shorter than a Sig, with a Sig trigger, and like I said, I believe this is the Sig Enhanced Elite short reset trigger. This is my understanding of this gun. Let me do it on top to give the Sig the advantage here. But yeah, look at that. Clearly the Taurus, a little bit shorter take-up than a Sig in single action mode. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll start looking for places to create these triggers once I've finished it up. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day. Bye.